Welcome back to Lemon Factor. I'm Chad, and today I'm here with our project car, the 2019 Mazda MX-5 Miata RF. We're going to install the Goodwin-Racing Midpipe. A couple videos ago, I did install the Goodwin-Racing Roadster Sport Super Street exhaust. We then took it to the dyno to see how much additional horsepower and torque was added to the car. And if you haven't checked out those videos, I'll leave a link in the description below. Today, we're gonna install the midpipe. I'm gonna take you through the install process. I am going to compare the Goodwin-Racing midpipe to stock, both from a weight perspective as well as an inner diameter size perspective. We will be conducting a full sound test of the midpipe. Adding a midpipe in combination with the axle back will definitely make the car sound louder. Want to see how much louder, and we want to see how much horsepower and torque will be added. If you aren't a subscriber already, please consider subscribing, turn on those notifications, and like and share. I've already jacked up the car and secured it on 4 jack stands. If you're curious on how to do that with your ND Mazda Miata, I also have a video on that. Please don't disregard this aspect of the install. Make sure you're securing your car on 4 jack stands and on a clean, level surface, secure surface. Want to make sure that we are safe when we do this. With that said, let's take a look at the tools we're going to need for the install. We're going to start off by removing the cross braces so we can get access to the midpipe. The cross braces are attached by You're looking at the catalytic converter here, and here's the oxygen sensor. And the oxygen sensor is attached back here with this clip. The next step is you want to disconnect the clip here so that when you are removing the midpipe, there's not a chance of you pulling on the electrical connections and damaging them. The clip was easy to disconnect. There's a tab at the top. You just press in and firmly grasp the plastic outer trim piece and it should pull right out. Loosen the bolts up here. This is the header. And I will do the same with the 2 bolts connecting the midpipe to the axle back exhaust. We'll come back up here. Just follow the pipe back up. Right here is a hanger supporting the midpipe. We'll disconnect the midpipe from the hanger, and then I would recommend you adding a little bit of PB Blaster to the bolts. Give it some time to set in. Now on this end, we're going to disconnect the axle back from the OEM midpipe. These 2 nuts and bolts. Now remember, this is the Goodwin-Racing, so it may look different depending on what axle back exhaust you have on your car. For the Goodwin-Racing, these are 2 17mm, and we'll pull out the OEM and take a look at it. From a weight comparison perspective, the OEM midpipe weighs in at 15.2 pounds, while the Goodwin-Racing midpipe totals 19.9 pounds. Not I'm a little disappointed in the quality of the Goodwin-Racing mid-pipe. I don't find any problems with the Goodwin-Racing Roadster Sport Super Street axle back exhaust. It looks like a pretty solid piece. However, the mid-pipe itself, as you can see here, this is the flange that connects to the axle back. You can see where the flange, where there's a little bit of a lip here, it's more recessed on this side, sticking out on this side, as you can see. As I mentioned in a previous video, I really think the welds could be a lot better. To me, these are sloppy, and especially in comparison to the Greddy, which look perfect. I don't know if it's a different manufacturer for the mid-pipe versus some of the exhaust, but our next step is to remove the oxygen sensor from the OEM mid-pipe. We have a 10mm wrench to disconnect it from this bracket. And then we're going to install the oxygen sensor on the Goodwin-Racing. One thing, though, that could be an issue is as you can see here, the OEM does have a little bracket that is holding on to the electrical connector, kind of keeping it out of the way when it's attached underneath the car. And let's see what happens, because once we disconnect that, as you can see here, there is no equivalent built into the Goodwin-Racing. But let's see if that's an issue. Otherwise, this cord is going to be dangling. We might have to do something with that. But I used a 7/8 wrench to disconnect the oxygen sensor. There is a washer in here. Just make sure you don't lose that. Keep that on. Now we'll transfer this oxygen sensor over to the Goodwin-Racing. So installing the Goodwin-Racing mid-pipe is very similar, but not identical to the OEM. In the middle, it is not one piece like the OEM. Goodwin-Racing includes a band that you slip on. This end will slide into this end. Once you got the length just right, connect both ends first, get your length right. Have this on there loose, and once you're ready, you will then tighten the bolt, or the nut on the end of this, with a 15mm socket. Okay, so we have everything attached. We have all of the nuts and bolts torqued down with the Goodwin-Racing mid-pipe. Interesting that the two included gaskets. They weren't a perfect fit. The holes were narrower, not the diameter of the hole itself, but just the spacing. They should have been spread out a little bit further. On one end, it wasn't a problem. On the other end, it gave me a little bit of a hassle. What I don't like about the Goodwin-Racing is it doesn't have the clip like the OEM does to move the excess wiring out of the way. So what I did, you can see at the top, there's a red zip tie. So I had the wiring go up over the top of that bracket, and then I zip tied it in place. And I did that so that the slack that would have been provided isn't touching the hot catalytic converter or the exhaust itself. This bend right here inhibits your ability, at least at the start, to get a socket wrench in here. And so does this bend as well. Reattach our braces, and then we can take a listen. If you're interested in finding out how the mid-pipe sounds, if you're interested in finding out how much horsepower and torque the mid-pipe adds to the car, then don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. One last thing to do. Let's start her up and at least hear a cold start with the mid-pipe installed. Oh, before we go, thank you for joining, and until next time.